Moving to Australia can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. The Move to Australia directory from Smart Steps to Australia brings together all the essential services you need into one convenient place, making it easier to find the right professionals to turn your dream into reality. Whether you're looking for a trusted migration agent, competitive shipping quotes, guidance on buying your first home, or help relocating your beloved pet, our directory has it all. We've curated the best services to support your new life in Australia. Find everything you need to make your move stress-free, with experts just a click away. Visit directory.smartstepstoaustralia.com and simplify your relocation journey today.
Welcome to the New Life in Australia podcast, hosted by me, Karen Bleakley, founder of smartstepstoaustralia.com. Moving to Australia with my family was a life-changing experience, but it wasn't without its challenges. That's why I'm passionate about making the relocation and resettlement process easier for you so you can enjoy this exciting adventure. Join me and my special guests as we share professional secrets and tips, learn from people who've made the move, and discover businesses that can help you realise your dreams. Now is the best time to create the life you've always wanted. This podcast is here to show you what's possible and to inspire you every step of the way. Let's go.
Let's take a moment to acknowledge the Gubbi Gubbi people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I live, work and play. I thank them for the privilege of being able to live in such an incredible part of the world, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of the New Life in Australia podcast. This week I'm chatting to Tracy Collins and we're talking all about planning your first big trip back to visit family and friends. So Tracy is the host of the UK Travel Planning and the Global Travel Planning podcasts, and she has websites of the same name. She has got so many resources about planning a big trip, of the logistics, getting organised, budgeting, just planning your itineraries and all of that good stuff. But we had a really great, very long chat all about the logistics of organising such a big trip. Because I know for us, when we go back to visit the UK, it's not just a quick weekend visit. It's a trip that's at least 3 weeks long, sometimes 5 weeks long, or even longer. And there are so many moving parts to it, from planning to transport to itineraries to budgeting and all of the in-between. So let's get started and roll the episode. And I know you're going to enjoy this one. So, hey, Tracy, welcome to the New Life in Australia podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you moved from, where you moved to?
Yeah, so my name's Tracy. I live in Australia. I emigrated here in 2017 from the UK. At that point, I was living in Burton-on-Trent and I'd been there for about 20 plus years. Previous to that, I've lived in numerous destinations around the world. But yeah, so that's the basic last place I was living for 20 odd years was in the UK before we emigrated to Australia.
And now you're lucky to live near me in Moreton Bay in Queensland.
Yes, beautiful part of the world.
And can you tell us a little bit about your UK travel planning website and your podcast?
Yeah, so I have a few websites. I have a UK travel planning website and a London travel planning website, and also actually global travel planning website. So you can see I'm a bit obsessed with travel planning. I've been traveling my entire life, so that's something that I'm very passionate about, helping people to plan their trips. So the UK travel planning one is what it says on the tin. It helps people plan their trips to and around the UK, and the podcast supports that website. We just are a big kind of, I guess, online resource for anybody planning their trip to the UK.
And that's great. Even though obviously I'm from the UK originally, when you go back for a trip, you're essentially a tourist. There's so many things to plan. It's not usually just a quick weekend away or a quick week away. You're usually going back for at least 3 weeks or maybe a month or 2 or even 3 or more months. So it's actually, there's so much involved in planning a big trip back. So I thought it'd be really good to have you back on the podcast again to talk a bit more about how on earth you go about planning that first big trip back.
It's a pleasure to be on. Actually, it's actually a really important point that you make there, Karen, because it's a long way from Australia back to the UK. So you want to make the most of your visit when you go back. So obviously you're going to see friends and family, but I'm sure that when you go back as well, you'll be thinking about the places that you've missed, or maybe you want to go and see some places that you haven't visited to make the most of that time.
Yeah, there's so much to do. It's sort of blending that family time, the friend time, catching up with friends, and time making the most of all the tourist attractions and all of the different things. Especially when we go back with kids, it's really nice to go back with them. They don't really remember a huge amount from living in the UK, so it's a great opportunity to go and do some travel experiences and add in some tourist attractions as well. So let's get started with the first question. This is something that I see coming up constantly at the moment in all of the Facebook groups about the new ETA, which you may need to get when you're going back to the UK. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, well, it's actually electronic travel authorization. So it's actually authorization to go into the UK rather than a visa. Now, my understanding is, but I'll always direct people to the official government site, the UK site, because that's where you'll get up-to-date information. And I'm also going to just mention, because we've seen this in our Facebook groups as well, that people have applied for their ETA and gone onto Google and done a search and actually then got basically a fraudulent website which has charged them a lot of money for an ETA. So be very, very careful and only go through the official government website, or go through the Australian Traveller website as well, because that'll give you the link. Because I think it's called Australian Traveller abroad. Smart Traveller. That's it. I couldn't think of the name of it. Yeah, Smart. Go. So check on the Smart Traveller website as well, because that'll have the official link. So the electronic travel authorization, or ETA, is similar to an ESTA in the US, or ETIAS, I think it's going to be called in Europe. So it's basically just authorization to travel. And now, as far as I'm aware, this is for people who do not need a visa. So if you actually need a visa to go to the UK, you will need to apply for a visa. But if you are from a country that doesn't require a visa, you will need an ETA. This does not matter if you are British or not. If you've got a British passport and you travel back in, you're fine. You will not need an ETA. But whether you're born in the UK and you live in Australia for 25 years and if your passport has expired and you don't travel back on that passport, you will need an ETA. That comes up a lot.
That's the important thing, is your passport must be in date. Like, I have a British passport, but it has expired. So I either need to renew my British passport or get an ETA to travel.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the point. At the moment, my passport expires in a few months' time. And I've got that decision to make. So do I travel back on the UK next time and get an ETA? It's not expensive, to be fair. Or do I replace my British passport and then I don't need the ETA? So that's your decision. But if you don't travel in on your British passport, you will need an ETA.
Yeah, and the ETA lasts for 2 years as well. So you can use it multiple times during that time period as well.
Absolutely.
So you don't need to apply for a new one each time you go back, if you go back within that 2-year period. So that's really important. Do you need travel insurance? This is another thing that people say. We've got a British passport. Do we need travel insurance to go back to the UK because there's a reciprocal agreement? Is it important?
Absolutely, yes, 100%. You need to have travel insurance. You've got to think about the fact that you're traveling from here to the UK anyway. So you've got that time when you're departing here. Things can get cancelled, flights and stuff like that. But when you arrive in the UK, you should have travel insurance. And good examples of this is, yes, there is a reciprocal agreement. And actually, my husband, Doug, was ill in February and had to go into hospital in Edinburgh. And that was covered by the reciprocal agreement. He had to show them his Medicare card. He had the treatment and there were no charges. He had to fill in lots of forms. However, that is for emergency treatment. I've been over in the UK and I've had really bad toothache. Like, I was crying. I was in so much pain. Now, that is not covered by a reciprocal agreement. There's no way you can't go to an NHS dentist. I had to pay privately to go and see a dentist and have the treatment. That was covered by having the travel insurance. You really, really, really shouldn't think about traveling anywhere without travel insurance. And just saying that there's a reciprocal agreement, it's not going to cover you for anything other than emergency care.
Yep. And in transit, I heard recently about somebody say that they know someone that was taken off a plane at the transit location because they weren't well and they were taken to a hospital and they didn't have insurance. And who knows how much that bill could end up racking up for them. So I know it's something that I think is essential to organise before you do your trip. It's really important.
Absolutely. And we say if you can't afford travel insurance, you can't afford to travel. That's it, full stop. Because honestly, you don't want your family having to crowdfund to pay for your medical expenses if something happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, leaving your Australian life behind for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever it is, it's a huge thing to plan. How do you even go about planning to leave everything behind for that period of time? What other things you need to think about?
Well, as you know, we've just come back from a 9-month trip, so it's rather longer than even a month. But we have been back for month-long trips. And yes, you need to be organised with things like your bills, what needs to be covered. Have you got things on direct debit? If there are things that you have to pay for, make sure that you know what date that's due out. Make sure you know what email address that bill's going to go to. I mean, we have everything electronically delivered, which is another thing that really you should have set up. Another thing to consider is, will you need to have access? For example, if you're going to go into your bank account and make a payment, have you told the bank that you are going to be using your bank account, your phone, from a different location? Because it will know you're in the UK. So you need to alert your bank that there may be direct debits, or not direct debits, but payments coming out of your account. You may be taking cash out of your account, for example, like that. So managing things like that, you need to let your bank know so they don't just freeze your bank accounts and you can't get access to anything.
We actually had a problem booking some things from Australia before we left for our UK trip a couple of years ago, where it was just refusing to make the payment to book some attractions and tourist attraction tickets because it just flagged them as being a dodgy payment. So
you need to prepare for that, and also we always make sure, like financially, we take a few credit cards with us, make sure that they're cleared before we go, so we've got those as a backup if we need them. When it comes to looking after, so we live in an apartment, so it's slightly easier. So we make sure that we ask friends that live in the same apartment block to keep an eye on our accommodation. When we were away this time, there was a massive cyclone which hit Brisbane, and so we were very concerned about things on our balcony, but our friends managed to bring everything in, so we were less concerned. So you've got to kind of plan for that, especially look at different time of year when you go in, what potentially could go wrong. I remember this is UK, it was actually a friend of ours who was traveling from the UK to Australia a few years ago in winter, and her pipe burst it was very cold. Her pipe burst and flooded out her hall, and we had to get in touch with her, and she was on a train somewhere in Queensland at the time. So make sure you leave details of how people can contact you in an emergency, because you just don't know if something goes wrong. They need to be able to contact you.
Yeah, no, we do leave contact details with our neighbours. We've got quite a few good friends on our street that we live on, and we've got things like, I think that you need to be specifically aware of, like we've got a swimming pool, and when it gets to storm season and the rain's coming down really heavy, just having someone keeping an eye on that is really helpful. We've also got a dog, so we have to kind of plan in kennels, and we've got fish, so we pay one of our neighbours' kids to come and feed our fish in our fish ponds and things like that. So there's a lot of different things to plan in, especially when we've gone back, and we've been going back sometimes during term time. Like when my dad passed away, we went back during term time with all the kids, and we had to plan in for our kids to still be able to log in to access schoolwork. And that was something that involved us going into the school IT department and having them allocate sort of access so that we could use the login remotely internationally, because when we first got there were issues with it. We had to kind of keep in touch with the IT department to keep the access going. So that was something else that we had to consider about as well. And if you're going away for a longer period of time and you need to be pulling your kids out of school, then our school has a process where you let the admin team know and you can fill in one form, and that one form gets distributed to all of the different teachers, rather than the first time we went away, I was emailing all the teachers of all 3 kids individually, and it was just like a real headache. So like if you are taking your kids out, that's something that specifically we had to kind of organise. It's worth just liaising with your school to plan that in. Then also you've got to think about, how are you going to get to the airport? Are you going to drive? Are you going to park? What are your recommendations there? Do you have any particular way that you...
Well, obviously going back to the UK for a month plus, it's just too expensive to park at the airport. Now, we're very lucky that we're only about 25 minutes away from the airport. So we just either get friends that will take us and drop us off, or we just get an Uber. Obviously, I'm always a bit worried about an Uber if it's an early flight, because you think, what happens if it doesn't turn up? But generally, we've never had any problems. The last few times, most of the flights, I might be wrong here, but I think most of the flights that leave, if you're going back to the UK, for example, via Dubai, they leave later on in the day. So therefore, it's a little bit easier for the Uber, or maybe asking friends to take you. If we're going somewhere for a weekend in Australia, I'd just park it at the airport, but the fees are quite steep.
Yeah.
I wouldn't leave it there for a month.
No. And so with flights and packing tips,
When do you think about booking your flight back to the UK? How far in advance is it? Is there a good time to be booking? Should you be leaving it late? Should you be booking it early?
Well, I guess this has changed for us in the last few years because we don't necessarily plan as far ahead in advance as we would. I mean, for example, we may actually be going back to the UK in September, end of August, September, which is not very far away, which is about 10, 11 weeks away. But at the moment, I'm just looking at flights and deciding whether we're going to do it. What I do, and this is a great travel tip for anybody, is we collect Qantas points. So we look at Qantas points and then look at flights. So we're always like monitoring that to see if we can get a deal to. I think we paid something like, I think it was maybe 47,000 points or something last year. We flew from Brisbane to LA, and that was it. I mean, that was maybe about $100 extra. Well, that's fantastic. So we had 47, and then we actually flew from LA to London again on, well, I think it was 67,000 points. So altogether, it was probably 200,000 points or something, or 120,000 points we needed, and it cost us like $400. So people in the UK are always amazed when we arrive back, and they're like, how come you go backwards and forwards between Australia and the UK? It's so expensive for flights. And I'm like, well, we use points. So it makes it a lot easier. Previous to COVID, I think we would have booked a lot more in advance. But these days, I just kind of look at options, which routes we can take, which routes are the cheapest, which routes work for us.
I was just going to say, with your global travel planning brand as well, you like to stop off at a lot of different countries on the way, so that influences which way you fly.
And I guess I'm lucky in that we have more time, so I could go over and stay there for a few months. It doesn't matter. But if you are on a restricted time and you've got to leave at a certain date because you've got leave from work and you've got to be back by a certain date, so you've got 4 weeks to go, then I definitely would be looking and booking that a good few months in advance so you can plan things past that. We're just a little bit more flexible, I guess, with what we can do.
Yeah. And in terms of what you pack for the flight, now I'm sure in the past we've done a podcast episode on UK travel planning where we were having a natter about packing for flights. So I'll get any links about those past episodes because I've been on that podcast a couple of times. So I'll pop any links to those in the show notes as well. But what is it that you like to pack for your long haul flights?
Okay, well, I'm really funny, I guess. Well, I don't know. This is probably a tip about how I pack. So I always have either a backpack or it's got to be carry-on that can either slot over the suitcase so I don't have to carry it until obviously the suitcase is checked in. And then I want to put it on my back because I don't want to be carrying stuff. And I know we're limited to like 8 kilograms, but still I don't want to. I'd rather have it. I'm just still prefer to have things on my back and carry it that way. But what I always do is I put Doug calls it a move cube, which is funny, just a small packing cube that I put in the essentials that I want for the flight. Because there's nothing worse if you're on a flight and you're trying to find something that's small, like a pen or a lip balm. So I put all my essentials in a small packing cube.
Maybe I learned that from you because I've started doing that. So that might have been something that we chatted about on the last time I was on the podcast
it's
before.
So much easier because there's nothing worse than you're trying to find all your bits and pieces. So in that, I generally will keep a book, a pen, lip balm, my earphones will fit in there as well. Anything like small that you just want to, you're going to want to use because I don't know about you, but I used to have a time when I would think, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And then you would never ever use it the entire flight. So I have those essentials and I take those out when I get on the plane, I put those on the seat and then usually put the rest of the bag up in the overhead locker so I don't have to get up there and get it again. I always take, now one thing that I do is on my iPad, I will download a whole series and then I will watch the entire series because you just never know on some flights if you've watched everything or if there's anything that's going to appeal. And for me personally, if I get into a series and there's like 15 episodes, I'll watch the whole thing all the way through and that's a great way for passing time. So that's something that I do. Always take a power bank, which now actually some of the flights that when we flew back from the UK recently, there are some airlines there who will not allow you to charge.
Yes, we had that. That was the first time I'd had that on my most recent trip back. So you need them in your hand luggage and you can't use them on the flight as well.
Yeah, that's it. They'll tell you you're not allowed to actually charge your device. So and if your phone's in flight mode and it's fully charged before you get on the flight, it should last the entire trip anyway. But it's just worth making sure that everything is charged. Your headphones, everything is charged because you may not be able to charge it up. Snacks, I usually take snacks. Doug always makes sure he has a bottle of water.
Me too. Yeah.
I don't drink as much as he does in terms of water. I'll usually wait until they come around and have a gin. You do that? Yeah, I'll just have a gin and tonic. that's my I don't like flying, so having a gin and tonic is a really good way to calm me down. Also making sure that I take layers. I've got a gorgeous pashmina that I bought in India last year, which is cashmere, and it's beautiful. It's lovely and soft, and I always take that and have that wrapped around me as well.
Flights are always so cold. I don't know why flights are so cold. I always have to have so many layers.
Oh, I've been on some, and you get they're hot, and then there's some. We did a flight a few years ago, actually, from Brisbane to Dubai, and I'll never forget it because it was the coldest flight I have ever been on. I wore every item of clothing I had, and I was still cold. And I've asked about that since, and apparently I didn't realize this, but apparently they turn the temperature down in the cabin just because it helps especially if they're serving food, because it helps you not feel sick. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard. That apparently if it's cooler temperatures, then it's just a better environment for if they've got food smells, if people do feel a little bit travel sick. Don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard.
There you go. Well, that's interesting to know. And back to what you were saying about the little cubes, the travel cubes, I put all of my charging cables and all my tech in one of them, just because generally I won't be needing that on the plane, but I'll be needing it when I land, and it just keeps it all out of the way together in one place. So that's one of my little tips that I use for packing on the plane as well.
And take a pen for those landing forms that you've got to fill in.
Do you know, though, so many places this time didn't have it. We still had to do it for coming back into Australia, but I didn't have to do it at Hong Kong. They've now replaced their system. You don't have. We used to have to at Hong Kong fill in a little arrival form.
Yeah.
We didn't, and I didn't have to when I flew back into the UK in April either.
That's a good point, actually, because a lot of places now they don't. It's electronic before you arrive, but we always have a pen anyway. And actually, the time I'm thinking is when we actually flew. We flew from Singapore to Perth, and Doug already had the forms. There's another thing when he left Australia. It took a couple of forms, so he already had them. So we just had them already filled in, and
That's
had a lot
helpful.
of. So then, because. Yeah, I hate, but honestly, when I'm on a flight, I don't really want to write much. I'm prefer to just put my headphones on, watch something I can get immersed in. And so, he'd already done all that, so I could leave him to just fill in the.
And especially with there being 5 of us, and I'm usually the one that has all the passports because I'm the only one that I trust to hold all the passports for everybody. So I have to sit and fill them all out. So it's really nice now in Hong Kong. We don't have to do that because that's usually our transit airport where we fly through. And snacks really useful for just kind of,
Sweet.
even though you get food brought to you all the time and you can press your buzzer and get food, it's just good to know that you've got, especially for the kids, that they've got something that's kind of familiar that they can kind of snack on in between meals.
No, it's not
as
just kids. We also have snacks. We also have the snacks.
So back to like when you're planning your trip, it's a good idea to be thinking about what things you actually want to do when you get there. Have you got any tips around that, about what things you might want to consider?
I guess it's trying to figure out, I guess priority will probably be seeing friends and family. And I know that when we go back, we look at, we want to spend time seeing family, possibly staying with family. So it's kind of working out who you're going to stay with and where they live, because you've got to kind of think your logistics of getting around. And then also if you want to catch up with friends, because I'm sure you will want to see friends, is kind of planning that first. And like, for example, if you're, I don't know, if a lot of my family are in the Northeast. So if I go and spend some time in the Northeast, then I kind of block maybe 10 days that I'm going to be spending in Northumberland. But what else do I want to see when I'm back? So I might go and stay with my sister, but we'll go and do a bit of sightseeing as well. And then, I've got family down near the Birmingham area. So we'll go down to Birmingham. So we'll stay down there for 10 days. But there's other things we want to do. And then also have some time to see things. And I guess you've got to kind of think about what time of year you're traveling back, what your priorities are. I know you've got kids, so you'll be thinking about what the kids want to do and see. So it's that. I guess there is so much to see in the UK. And honestly, I appreciate it far more now that I don't live there, which is crazy, isn't it? There's just so much to see and do that really you're going to have to prioritize. And what you don't want to do is bombing around the whole of the country the whole time, because that's all you'll do. You spend it in a car or on a train. So really thinking logistically about where you're going to be based.
And how you're going to get around. I know that when we have a bit of more of a unique situation in that I'm from sort of Lincolnshire and Sheffield and my husband's from Hampshire. So we have two quite distant sort of areas we've got to explore and spend time at. And so we fly into London, and then usually Matt's family will pick us up
drive us down to Hampshire, where we then borrow a car and we'll either stay down there for a couple of weeks before going up north for a couple of weeks and then coming back down to them at the end so they can then drop us at the airport. But there's so many logistics in there. We'll talk a little bit about sort of travelling around a little bit later on, but there is a lot to consider with all of it. And like you say, booking ahead for some of the busier attractions. If you know you want to do things, your tip about booking the Harry Potter studio and some of the London attractions and stuff ahead of time was really invaluable when we went back a couple of years ago, because we knew we wanted to do more touristy things with the kids because they'd never been to London or been around London before. So they really wanted to see stuff and explore stuff. And it was really good to be able to book those in ahead of time because they do get really booked up really early.
Yeah, they do. And then you don't want to be disappointed when you get over there and the kids say, I really want to go to Harry Potter Studios, for example, and you can't get tickets because they do book up way ahead. And then, if you've got that booked, you may have to kind of arrange your itinerary a little bit around that, what availability is, especially if you leave it later and you've got less ticket choices. If you book it, if you've got an idea you're going to be going back on a particular month, even if you're not sure about your flight dates, you don't have to have the exact day of the flight. You may have a range of a few days and a few days that you might come back. You still got that month in between. So just kind of looking at what works. Yeah. Another thing to think about really carefully though is what season you're going back in. Like, are you going to go back in school holidays where it's going to be crazy, crazy busy? Are you going to go back in December when, it's busy in London? If you're going to go to London, for example, it's busy all the Christmas preparations. So it's kind of thinking about that is like, if you want to do sightseeing, and I know this is going to impact a lot of people, you have to travel potentially over the December, January school holidays, is that unfortunately that is winter. So therefore you're going to have worse weather, colder weather, let's put it that way, but also you're going to have less hours of daylight. So that can impact on actually how much you can do. Yeah.
And for us visiting family back in the UK, our school holidays are different to the UK school holidays, which is good in terms of tourism and travelling and getting about, but it also means that like the young cousins find it hard to spend time with you because they can't get time off school to go and hang out with us and do some of the fun things that we want to do. So that can also add a bit of impact to things as well. So there's a lot to consider when it comes to sort of booking it all in. With social catch-ups, something that I found really drained me on our last trip a couple of years ago. We did a big trip. We tried to book so many different hangouts in with different groups of people. Like we'd have people that we were in our baby groups with and people that we used to work with and people that my husband worked with and people that we used to go to school with and in kind of different hangouts. But we found quite quickly that was just eating up our diary and it was just impossible.
It would fill you a month. It would fill you a month. And actually, we got the idea from you because Doug comes from Burton-on-Trent and he's got a huge amount of family and friends around there. I worked in Derbyshire for 20 years, so that same area. And we both had friends we wanted to see, had all his family he wanted to see. And we had limited time in Burton-on-Trent. So we were like, how are we going to do this? And after Doug heard what you'd done when you arranged to meet everybody in a pub, that's what we did. And but Doug's not here actually because he would say this, but he said it was one of the best things that he did. So we basically booked in a date and told everybody like a month before on the 22nd of September, whatever day, I can't remember the exact date, we are going to be in this particular pub between these hours, please come and see us. And actually, I think the pub was surprised. It was so many people popped in, said hello. It was really good because it's flexible for everybody else as well, because it was like a few hours they could choose from. If they wanted to come and stay for the whole afternoon, they could. But, we did have people popping in and out. I had friends that caught a bus from Derby and came down that I used to work with who came and spent a few hours and we had a great catch up. So it was a brilliant way. I don't know how many people we saw, but it was a great way to catch up with a lot of people in one day. And then that was great. It just meant that we touched base, we're back, hi, and then, you didn't feel bad that you'd missed out on seeing people.
Yeah, no, at first, as I say, we were trying to do it all individually, like in smaller, minier groups, but it just was so hard that when we started just doing that and decided that this is the way to go, especially when we got up north, it was like, we're going to be at this location. My brother held a barbecue for us, just all the family could come over during the day, just throughout and just drop in, say hi. It just made life so much easier. And then another friend hosted a great get together and just all of our friends just kind of popped in throughout the day. And it just meant you were sort of working smarter with things and just fitting more into your itinerary, which then gives you more time to either spend with the family that you really want to catch up with or to do other things. So it's a really good idea to do that. So when it comes to actually getting over to the UK, how do you manage your money when you're traveling? Do you use your Wise card? I know Wise cards are something that are really helpful to have. Do you use credit cards? Do you take cash with you?
You know what? I can't think of the last time I saw any cash in the UK. Doug probably had maybe £50 in his wallet, but I hardly ever, if ever, I can't even think the last time I used cash in the UK, to be honest. Try not to travel with cash. I just have contactless. I use my Wise card. We travel extensively around the world. So I have, I don't know, 15, 16 different currencies on there, and you can switch between. I can add from my Wise card into my Australian bank account and vice versa. It's just much easier. It works really, really well for us. We always take credit cards as well. So we have two credit cards that we use quite often, which also collect points, Qantas points. So we're always thinking about Qantas points. And we have kind of a third backup one as well, that just in case. So we always travel with credit cards. We are really strict with our credit cards, though. If we use them on a month, we pay it off at the end of the month. It's so easy to spend so much more money than you expect. The UK has become, I know Australia has become more expensive, but the UK is very expensive. The Australian dollar is worth less than it was, so it's become more expensive to go back to the UK. So I will say a big tip, if you are going to use your credit cards, have a plan how you're going to pay it off, because you don't want to come back with a $30,000 credit card bill.
So easily done as well, especially when you're using a card rather than cash. You're just spending, and not actually realising quite how quickly it all adds up.
And the thing is with the Wise card is it's a debit card, so you've got to have the money in there, so you can't use it unless you've got money to spend.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We did a mixture of both. I'm always conscious of trying to collect Qantas points, so I will use the credit card for larger payments. But when it's small things like coffee shops and things like that, I just use my Wise card and pay. It's also a good way to keep track of what you're spending as well on a daily basis, and do I need to top up? So that's the way that we travel. I have still got a UK bank account, but I don't use that very often. I tend not to use it when I'm back in the UK, to be honest. I find the Wise card is just
helpful,
just
as well.
So good.
Yeah, sometimes we will move money over and just use our UK bank cards. We use a mix of things, and I've got my Wise card as well. So it's a bit of a mix. And like you say, if you're booking big things and accommodation and things, credit cards are really good for giving you that extra protection as well for making your booking. When you go over, do you normally take suitcases full of Tim Tams and things over for your relatives? I know last time we went back, the time before last that I went back with all my family, I took literally a suitcase that was filled with cherry ripes, Tim Tams, and all of the kind of goodies for everyone in the UK. And everywhere we'd go, we'd be like, here, have some Tim Tams.
Well, it's really funny because Doug's actually just gone to the post office with a big box full of Tim Tams and cherry ripes to post to our friends in the UK because they love them. It depends if we're heading straight back to the UK, because if obviously we're going via a number of other destinations, which we do, we don't take chocolate because it could melt if we're going somewhere hot. So we're really conscious of that these days. What I have started taking back more of, and it's mainly my niece has just had a baby, and I've got lots of friends in the UK who've just recently had babies, is I've started taking books back, Australian books, so books about bin chickens or about life in Australia or animals in Australia or geography of Australia or any of the Possum Magic. Just the normal kind of Australian kids books. I've started taking those back to the UK, and they have gone down so well. I've already actually I went the other day and bought 5, and I've just keep buying all the time. And then I've got a stash, and then when I go back and give all my friends that have got babies.
One of our favourites was There's an Ouch in My Pouch. So
I have to get that.
My kids love that one. Before we moved, we read it every night before we moved when they were tiny.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I do. I've actually just bought recently a little, because I've got a friend having a baby in September, and I've just bought a little bib with a kangaroo on it. Anything with kangaroo theme, koalas. We will take food back if we're going back. Like my mum really likes the lemons and oranges and limes you get to put in drinks and cocktails. Well, you can buy them here, and we've not found them very easily in the UK. Well, you can get them from Coles here, and they're like $5 or whatever and so Doug took about 25 packets back when he came back in November. She's just told me she's ran out, so I think we need to send her some more. I think the thing is to ask as well if there's something people kind of go, I'd really, especially if they've been to Australia and they go, I like the cherry ripes, or I like the Tim Tams, or can you bring bring this back or that back. I've done the usual tea towels and mugs and things like that as well over time.
And the good thing is, if you do what we did, which was take that case full of things to take, it means you've got an empty case to fill up with hula hoops and Monster Munch and minstrels and Galaxy to come back with.
I mean, we've got to the point now that if we're not coming back directly from the UK, which we didn't on our last trip, we were actually in Malaysia and Singapore the last 2 legs of that trip, and there are Marks and Spencers in both of those. So we stocked up. So we bought cherry cake, and we bought crumpets, and we brought tea cakes, and we brought all sorts, and we brought those back with us, and we had those. So I'm always thinking on the way back, what can I bring back as well? So don't overpack when you go, except if you're going to take things that you're going to get rid of when you get to the UK, like presents, because you will be bringing a lot back.
And you will be. And then also, if it gets cold over there, you might be buying thermals from M&S while you're over there that you need to bring back, or big coats. When I went in April, I wasn't prepared for it to be too cold, because I don't really have a lot of cold weather gear in Queensland. So I ended up buying a thick winter jumper and a new jacket and quite a few bits and bobs.
Oh, I bought a massive duvet. I call it my duvet because it was so cold in Scotland in January. And I went to Marks and Spencer's and bought this full length duvet coat. It literally is like you are wrapped in a duvet. And there were times where I went out with Mum and she says, "Oh, my legs are a bit cold." And I'm like, "I'm fine because I've got my duvet coat wrapped around me." And it cost, I think it was something like £120 from Marks and Spencer's. I've actually left it in the UK with my mum.
I was going to say, you're never going to wear it here.
Never ever going to wear that in Australia. I mean, maybe if I go to Tasmania.
I was just going to say, if you go somewhere, we do get snow here.
Yeah, just thinking if I go to Tasmania, or if I go to New Zealand, or go to somewhere cold, I will need it. But I did leave that in. I'm thinking, actually, I'm going to Antarctica in November. I'm wondering if I should have brought it back. I need to go back and bring
post it back. Oh, that's great. Now, in terms of how you get around, I'd mentioned that we tend to logistically have Matt's family, because they can come in a couple of cars to pick us up with five of us and all of our luggage and things. We need quite a bit of transport to be picked up from the airport. What's the best way to get around? Should you hire a car? What are there to consider?
Well, we do a mix, really. We hire a car, and then also we do a lot of train travel. So we'll do a mix. It depends on the area that we're at, and whether, like, for example, if we're just going to Edinburgh, say we're going to Edinburgh and staying there for a week and just going to base ourselves in Edinburgh and see things around that, we would just probably take trains. But if you're going to do like a big trip around the whole of Scotland, then you're going to need a car, because you're not going to be able to get around a lot there's not enough places to visit by train, put it that way. So it depends what your itinerary looks like, because you can actually get around from A to B fairly easily in the UK by train, and so that's what we use a lot. But we also do hire cars. We tend to hire, I think the longest we've had a car for was probably about a month. And then, that's easy. We make sure that so I'm I'm always worried about all these stories you hear about people getting a scratch on the car and then getting charged thousands and thousands of dollars. So when we pick up the car, I always pay for the full insurance, so that there is absolutely no chance we can get charged anything. I don't know, sometimes it costs you an extra £10-15 a day. I don't care. I will do it, because I'd rather pay it up front and not know that, not have the worry that there's going to be a $4,000 bill land on my credit card. So I never take the chance. And the roads in the UK, they're narrower than you get used to in Australia. And you forget, honestly, when you've been traveling and driving around Australia, you forget about driving in the UK.
My kids could not believe that the roads in Cornwall were roads.
Yeah, like, like a track.
How is this a two-way road? They were terrified.
Yeah, you lose track. You lose the experience of traveling like in a major city. And so, Doug does that driving, and I work with a company called Tripyama who do driving guides. And this is going to sound crazy when I say this, but honestly, I would recommend, if you've not driven in the UK and you've been in Australia driving for the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, do the Tripyama course, because honestly, it will prepare you. And you're going to go, well, yeah, I drive on the left. I'm used to it. There's so many more things that you will not realize will have changed.
Yeah. And just things that you've got so used to where you merge from in Australia, and all things that are different in the UK.
Yeah, it's crazy. And also things like in the UK, it's far harder to get an automatic than it is here. We just get an automatic, don't we? Don't think we need to get a gear shift. But in the UK, majority are still gear, so you have to pay a little bit extra and plan ahead if you want to get an automatic.
I wouldn't drive manual anymore.
No, what's something else?
Automatic for so long.
I'm the same, honestly. And poor Doug, we ended up one time, we hadn't booked ahead for the automatic, didn't think about it. It's a few years ago, and he had to drive out of the centre of Edinburgh with a gear shift, which he hadn't been driving for a few years because we've got an automatic in Australia. So that was added pressure and added stress,
in
things
a city
that you don't
well.
have to think about.
Yeah.
So honestly, I would definitely consider doing something like that. And also, we have wider roads, so we can drive bigger cars. You don't go for a massive car in the UK because you won't fit it in the park. The car parking spaces are so small.
Yeah, no, really good points. Really good points.
And you have to pay for parking everywhere. Everywhere.
I was just going to say, in terms of us as well as a family of 5, hiring a car versus paying for train travel it's actually more cost effective if we did need to hire a car, because quite often train travel from one end of the UK to the other can be quite hefty for traveling.
You can probably look at rail cards to kind of work it out, but I guess when you've got a family, the flexibility of having the car is probably worth it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have a UK driving license anymore. I have my Australian driving license. It's absolutely fine. That's what we show. I'm always put as a second driver. Doug does majority of the driving, but we have Queensland driving licenses, and that's absolutely fine.
And you need to travel on those when you're driving in the UK anyway, because your UK license, I believe, isn't valid when you don't have a UK address anymore.
No, because it won't have a UK address on it. And I mean, mine's expired, but maybe it hasn't. I don't know. I don't even look at it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, something that comes up quite often in the groups is people wanting to borrow a car from a friend or a family. And that's something that we do every time. We've been really lucky. I know that not every insurance company will allow you to drive with an Australian license. So I know lots of people in Facebook groups say that their dad or mum or whatever have rung their insurance company and tried to get them covered on the insurance, and it's just been either astronomical in cost or not possible. But we've been really lucky that both my father-in-law and my brother have both been able to add us for like $10 or something.
That's really amazing, because we've not had that. I know when you mentioned that, I was like, wow, I did not know that could be done.
It can be a big issue. Like a lot of companies won't allow it. So I would just say that if you're going to be trying to borrow a vehicle, get that family member to ring up the insurance ahead of time to make sure that you can actually do it. And if not, then you've got time to start looking around, see if there's any independent insurers that could insure you to drive that vehicle. I know that a lot of people do end up just needing to hire a vehicle when they go back. And we did have a bit of a horror story when we went back a couple of years ago, hiring a car, because we went for what we thought was just the cheapest one we found online. And I think that was a really big mistake. So we ended up booking it with a company that we paid online for the insurance and all of the things when we booked it all. And then when we actually came to pick it up, some people actually came up to us while we were waiting in reception and said to us, if you're hiring a car from this company, make sure you take really thorough pictures, videos and everything, because they've just kept us here for an hour trying to prove to us that we'd scratched it and damaged the car, and they were trying to get extra money out of us and things. And they did take my husband off into a tiny room without me to try and kind of persuade him to pay a huge amount extra for some extra insurance thing that they were offering that was different to the one that we'd taken out when we booked it. So I just would be really mindful now in future about who you're hiring your car from, and just being very aware of it, making sure that you're taking lots of pictures and that you're covering your back.
Do a video as well. It's not just photos these days. Take a video. Even though we pay for that insurance, we still do it. It's just we're just so programmed to do it. I just we've all heard really horror stories about this. So do your research and be really careful.
Yeah. And as you were saying, we do also use a lot of public transport when we're back, even though we've got cars. So if we go into London, we wouldn't consider driving into London. We get trains.
I'm glad to hear that, Karen. I'm very glad to hear that.
In most cities, actually, like we'll leave the car, say, in Lincoln, and we'll get a train over
There's
to
park
Sheffield.
and ride in the UK as well. You've got park and ride options, and we talk about that in our consults. We do consults on UK travel plan, and people travel back, and we go, you don't need to drive into Bath. You don't need to drive this. You just park and ride. That's the whole point. Park and ride. Leave it. Get the free bus in wherever you're going to go.
Yeah, and have a great day out in the city, and it takes a lot of the pressure off. And I know when I was back, I needed to get a train down to London from Newark, and I was recommended the Seatfrog app, where you can bid on upgrades. I think it was like, I can't remember how much I paid extra for an upgrade to get first class train tickets for like hardly anything. Where I got
like £10 and you get
it was really, really good. So there's lots of good ways of booking ahead as well can be a really good way. I know that we've sometimes booked tickets from Havant to London for like £12 or something silly, but if you book it on the day, it might be £100. So it's like
absolutely.
a different
Don't
kind
leave
of
it until the last minute.
Yeah, and National Express also, when I went back in April this year, I ended up travelling quite a bit on National Express, and that can be slower travel, but it can also be really budget friendly. It saved me a lot of money on travelling on the trains. So National Express are a really good way to get around.
Well, if anybody needs any help about traveling in the UK by train, Doug, my husband, is an expert on that, and he has a UK train travel tips Facebook group. We've also got our train section on the uktravelplanner.com website as well, and we've obviously got a lot of podcasts also about train travel, because there are ways that you can save money. So you can look at the different passes that are available that are open to you as well, because you don't actually have to live in the UK to get any of those. So you just have to look what was, for example, a two together. If there's two of you traveling together, then you'll get a 30% discount on all your train travel. So there are some exclusions. You just have to look at like the time that you can travel, and you have to travel together, for example, on that one. But it costs £35. Well, when you start working out how much you'll save, it's worth looking at those. Same for you for a family and friends, maybe Railcard is having a look at what is available. Doug, if Doug was here, he'd be saying, make sure National Rail Enquiries is the best place to have a look when you're planning your trip. And we use the train line to book train tickets, because it's all centralised and all in the same place. So, where you don't have, to go lots of places looking for your tickets. So that was what I'd recommend, but definitely check out the website for that as well.
Yeah. Now, is it normal to experience a bit of re-entry shock when you go back, or do you just kind of slot back into your old life really quickly as soon as you arrive?
I think the important thing to say here, and I kind of, this is something that when I first moved away from the UK when I was a child, actually, and I went back I was a teenager, I went back the year after. And I think it's probably easier to get your head around this now than it was 30, 40 years ago. But life moves on. So your life in Australia has moved on, but you've got to also remember that all of your friends and family, that their lives move on, and it moves on without you being there. So, I loved my job in the UK. I absolutely loved it. So when I catch up with my ex-colleagues when I'm back, there's always a bit of a pang of, oh, it would have been so lovely to still be working with you guys. But you just have to kind of make peace with your decisions. Those are your decisions. Therefore, this is where you are now. You can't look back and think with regrets. Also, be really careful with this one, is that family may pull at your heartstrings about the fact that you're back, and isn't it lovely to be back? Now, we don't have this much of a problem actually with my family at all, because they're used to us always traveling, so they're not. But I have heard this from other people where it's kind of like I guess, bit of a guilt trip that you're leaving again and you're taking the grandkids away, for example, or whatever. So I think that can be really hard. So prepare yourself for that. Also, I'm just going to say, also be prepared for those people who you thought were your friends who don't want to know, who aren't interested in what you're doing or your life is anymore. And that's quite hard to get your head around. But also that will happen where, again, their lives have moved on and that you're just not in it anymore.
That's one that I just really sort of struggle to get my head around. Like, sometimes even now on Facebook, I look and, well, even a couple of years after we moved here, you'd look and somebody that you were Facebook friends with, you were actually really good friends with in real life, has just unfriended you. But they're still on Facebook. They've just unfriended you and just gone off, and they're kind of having their life without you, and they've just kind of moved on with their life. And it is a strange experience. And I know that I do hear a lot of people say that when you're flying all that way back to see people, and then you're telling people, oh, I'm going to be here in the pub this afternoon, and not everyone can be bothered to just take a 20-minute trip to come to the pub to say hi and see you.
And that's hard. That is hard. We've had friends, really good friends, we consider really good friends in the UK, and we've been back numerous times, and every single time there's been a reason that we haven't been able to catch up. And they live like 10 minutes away from Burton-on-Trent. And we did the pub thing in September, and we really expected them to come, and they didn't turn up. So you kind of got to just put that to bed and just go, right, okay, we've made every attempt we can. In fact, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say I've not fallen out with a friend, but I organised to meet up with a group of friends. And, we've just travelled thousands of miles away, and this person didn't want to travel down 20 miles to where we were. She actually wanted us to go to where she was. And I'm like, but no, this is how we're doing it. Like, we can't, this is the only way we can do it. You're going to have to be flexible with us. Yeah. And they wouldn't. So I was like, in the end of it, I went, this is how it is. unfortunately, this is how we've organised it. And if you can't come, you can't come. Like, we can't
please everybody.
You
and
can't.
So that's what really struck me on the trip 2 years ago that we did, that people were kind of like, oh, you're going to call in this area of the UK on your way between places. And it was like, well, everything was so busy on our itinerary between seeing people and between going places we wanted to go, and we'd come all that way, and it was just too hard to fit in everybody as individual trips. And it is difficult that you won't get to see everybody, and not everybody will prioritise coming to see you, but that's okay. You live your life in Australia and you've made that choice. And
what you do is you celebrate the friendships and relationships that you still have, that those people that want to cherish that.
Yes.
And, and that's something that I've learned through traveling a lot of my life, that, that's just human nature, and that's how it is. It's disappointing. I always look for the most positive and best in everybody I meet. And I do have a little twinge, and then just even talking about it, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm really sad that I didn't see that couple and I didn't see this particular friend, because I would have loved to have seen them. However, there's nothing I could do about it. We did everything we could to try and see them. And so, you just have to move on.
Do your best.
Yeah.
Now, just to mention while we're on this topic, the hardest thing I think is to prepare yourself for the fact that you're excited to be going back, but every time you see people, there's goodbyes.
Yes.
That's what really, it's emotionally an exhausting trip, because especially if you are doing that thing where you're meeting people in a pub for an afternoon and people come by for an afternoon, you're saying hello to them and goodbye to them in the same space of time. And yes, you might be sort of staying with your parents or your siblings or whatever for a week or two and spending more time with them. But even though you're excited to see them, it's always at the back of your mind that you know that it's going to end and you've got to get back on a plane. And it never gets any easier, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's always, we plan to go back quite often, but I still think that even if it's 6 months or 3 months, it's still that time where you're not spending with, but Australia's home. So we come home, and that's what we do. I think one thing that it's really important to say is that you will feel that you don't fit in anymore, and that's perfectly normal, because you will sit down and you'll perhaps sit at breakfast with your parents or your friends or whatever, and you'll be watching breakfast TV, and the presenters are not people that you know.
Or they are people that you know, but they're 10 years older.
Yeah,
like,
or
what happened to them?
Or you'll watch something in like a TV series. I mean, we do watch a lot of TV, but there'll be something that they're all into, and you don't know anything about it.
Or just a strange one is how drink bottles, whenever you buy a drink bottle in the UK, they're all attached on the plastic. It's like, when did that happen? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but when you screw off your lid, the lid doesn't come off anymore. It stays attached to the neck of the bottle. Yeah,
and that was something. So it's things like that. Another one that was a huge one for me. We went back. I remember going shopping at Marks and Spencer's. I love Marks and Spencer's. With my mom, and she was using this kind of handheld way to pay for the food and scanning it. Now, possibly that had started to come in before I left, but not to the point that my parents in the 80s were using the scanner quite confidently around Marks and Spencer's, where I was going, I never use it. Let me just tell you, I don't use it. I just do the old-fashioned way through the till. But they honestly, that grows around. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know about that. It's just things like that they know about and you don't know about.
And it's just tiny things that just make you stop in your tracks and go, wow.
When did that happen? And I mean, that is less of a problem now than it used to be. I initially left the UK in the 80s, and we didn't have the internet. I didn't know what was big in the UK. I remember going back and, all my friends were watching on a Thursday night. I think it was Fame. It was Top of the Pops and Fame or something. I remember. And for them, that was a regular Thursday night, and I didn't know anything about it. And I remember feeling really out of it. And this is one of my best friends, because they were doing, and so it's that there's going to be a disconnect, and it doesn't matter how much you try, you're not going to be able to avoid it. You just have to prepare and cope with it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, in terms of communication, when you go back, what are the best options to staying in touch? Like for phone, for internet, for Wi-Fi? How do you manage that when you go back?
I have an eSIM on my phone, so I've got an Apple phone with an eSIM, so that's what we use. Doug's also got an eSIM on his phone, and we found that works really, really well. Previously, we actually did have a portable Wi-Fi device which worked really well for the two of us, and I think if there's like a family traveling, that's a good way, because then the kids connect to that. if you want to keep an eye on the data use. I don't know, and if they haven't got iPhones or whatever, to be able to use an eSIM. I've never, ever, ever used a local SIM because I know I would lose my SIM card.
Yeah, we for the first time on this recent trip, I did an eSIM as well, and we set it all up in Australia before we got there, and it was just an easy switch over. It made life so easy. But yeah, we've also got a Wi-Fi device as well, so that we can kind of attach all of our iPads and sort of devices and things for the kids, and they can kind of log into that when they're doing any work on their laptops and things like that. So that does make it a lot easier. The only thing to just make sure of is that you can access your Australian number if needed. I think for my phone, I think I need to pay a roaming kind of access fee to be able to accept texts for things like banking transactions and things. So you don't want to get all the way over to the UK and then find out that you can't access your credit card bill or your statement or get into your online banking because it's sending you a text to a number that won't accept a text.
Now that is a pain, I have to tell you. When we were traveling, we found that it was really annoying because they will, I wish people would stop sending texts to your Australian number because that's not what you're using. So then I'd have to switch my eSIM over and then go to my Australian, and it's $10. So it was like, that adds up. So really think about how you are giving permission to, whether it's a bank transfer or sometimes it's on my affiliate relation. Like I've got to get an affiliate account and then they're going to send it. So yeah, that it can add up. Be really careful with your phone. I think that's another thing. I keep it in flight mode.
Yes, I do
the
too.
entire time because I mean, even now that I've got the eSIM, it's less of a worry. But before I used to just keep it in airplane mode the entire time because I didn't want it to go onto my Australia account. So with eSIM, you just, you don't have to worry so much because you can go on to you're using that SIM and not switching back to your Australia one. But I will just say that one day I switched back to my Australia one to get code and I completely forgot to switch back. Now, luckily, I'd got the thing saying it was $10 because I'd activated that day pass for that day. But if I had forgotten, that could have added up.
Well, I just remember I went to Fiji a few years ago and I thought I'd set my phone up to be locked down in every way just to be able to use phone calls when I needed them. It wasn't supposed to be kind of draining data or doing any things. And the first day I arrived and I kind of kept just checking in and it was okay and it wasn't charging me too much. And the next morning I got up and it had charged me like $200 and I was in a big panic. So now I'm really careful about leaving it on airplane mode if I can. But yeah, the eSIM seems to be a really good way of managing things now. So I'm using a different one on this next trip, so I'll report back on what this one's like. I had a few issues with the one that I used when I went back in April, so it'll be interesting to try a different one. Now, dealing with obviously long haul flights means unfortunately jet lag. What are your experiences of jet lag? Have you got any good tips to avoid it?
I hate jet lag, like everybody. Jet lag I tend to experience coming back to Australia far worse than actually going over to the UK. So my tip, which is not available to everybody, is to just do it slowly. So we just came back from Europe and we did it over months and we just traveled on short trips, like 5-hour flights and stopped off in destinations. I know not everybody could do that. I think the thing is, and I learned this, I was a nanny in my 20s and I remember working for a guy who was flying all over the world. And he said, the main thing is you just go into the time zone of where you've just arrived. So however tired you are, you need to stay awake and try and get yourself into that time. So and I think sometimes the worst thing is I feel hungry. I wake up in the middle of the night. I remember when I moved to Canada and waking up at, I don't know what time, it was 4:00 in the morning. I was starving because at that point it was like 9:30 in the UK or whatever. And I was like, I'm so hungry. I don't know. I've not tried melatonin or any of the other things that I've heard that people do.
I tried that this time after this most recent trip because I don't struggle when I fly from Australia to the UK. Absolutely fine, hit the ground running there. I just have a bit of sleepiness in the afternoons, but it's kind of, you can just power through that. But coming back to Australia,
so hard.
3 weeks it takes me to get through it. And somebody had mentioned melatonin to me. So when I got back and I was really struggling, I went out and bought it. And oh my gosh, it's the best ever.
Well, that's good to know.
It really is worth doing. So yeah, I went around the kind of chemist's warehouse, whatever, and had a look and found one that sounded really good. Yeah. And it just, you take it and really quite quickly you just feel really drowsy and relaxed and you just drift off to sleep really easily, which is huge because when I normally get back the first few days, I just can't really go to bed. I'm
No,
just
can't go to
really
sleep.
wide awake until about 5 a.m. or something.
Yeah,
And
you're still on UK time, and that could be 9 hours or 10 hours behind for us on the east coast of Australia. It's a long It's a long time difference, and it kind of is that whole day night thing is all messed up. I don't know how pilots do it. I kind of take my hats off to any staff on a flight, the stewards and stewardesses, because I think, how do flight attendants deal with it? How do pilots deal with it? Because
it's hard. I know my husband, obviously, is an aircraft maintenance engineer. He's on shifts all the time, and if he's moved from a real big block of night shifts and then he's got to get up at 3 a.m. a couple of days later, it's a really big turnaround and a pressure to go to sleep. So it really has helped. So I'm excited to know this trick now for next time, because I follow all the other rules about getting sunshine and going out for walks and trying to go to bed at the normal times, but none of those have really helped before. So anyway, so if you had just one tip to share for planning your first big trip back home to the UK, what would that be?
Be flexible. I think don't overplan. It's far too easy to think I'm back for 4 weeks. I'm going to be able to do all this stuff. I'm going to be able to see all these people. You won't. You really won't. It's just have some flexibility in that. Work out what exactly you absolutely have to do, who do you absolutely have to see, and then work around that. Do the tip that Karen said about having all your friends in one, meet you in one place, and then that takes a lot of stress off. 28 days is not a long time. It sounds like it is, but honestly, you'll arrive and the next thing you know, you'll be packing your bags and leaving.
Yeah. And for us, dividing our time between two parts of the country, you're only going to get like a week to 2 weeks at each location, plus travel time between. And my tip to add to that would be to manage people's expectations, because people think when you're coming back for 4 weeks, they've got you for 4 weeks, and they kind of forget that you've got a lot to fit in that time and a lot of different people to see. And especially if you're a couple going back, you've got family and friends on both sides of you to fit in. And people can get a bit disappointed if they're only getting you for a week or two of that time.
So you know what I say? I say, come and visit us in Australia.
We're very lucky, actually. A lot of our family do come out to visit us. But yeah, that's the ideal way to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Well, thank you for chatting to me today. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Well, we have said the website, so uktravelplanning.com, londontravelplanning.com. So if you plan to visit London, that is specifically for London. So we'll give you lots of tips. Our uktravelplanning.com website has just everything you need to plan your trip to the UK. Also check out the podcast, UK Travel Planning. Also, if you plan to travel to the UK back via a number of destinations, check out our global travel planning .com website and also our podcast, because we cover a lot of destinations that you might be stopping off for a couple of days for, and you can find out lots of tips and things to know. So that's basically the main places, but we also have Facebook groups as well, UK Travel Planning private Facebook group you can join, as well as the train travel tips.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Tracy. It's been really good fun as always.
Thanks, Karen. It's been a joy. Always great to chat with you about travel, and especially about tips for people who are living in Australia and planning to go back to the UK or making that big move.
So thanks again to Tracy for all of that great conversation, all of those great tips. As I say, I'll pop Tracy's details in the show notes so that you can find out more about UK travel planning. There are so many resources in there, and it's really great because I know that when we go back to the UK now, we're kind of going back as tourists, and we want to plan in some tours and some trips and some attractions and things so that we can actually enjoy it as a holiday as well. I've got a blog post on my website as well, which I will link to, all about planning your big trip back, where I detail all things like packing lists and checklists and things, which cover all of the things to do before you actually go away for a big trip as well. I actually wrote that blog post purely for my own benefit, because after we did the first big trip back to the UK, I didn't want to forget it for the next time I was doing the trip. So I've written it all down, and it's all there available for you to use when you're planning your big trip too. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you found it inspiring for getting organised and planning your next big trip back. So in the meantime, let's get building your new life in Australia, one episode at a time.